From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Today was committee day in the legislature as the 2025 regular session is in its final stretch. We'll start in the House Judiciary Committee, where a public hearing over parole board legislation lasted for almost 2 hours. Lawmakers are considering Senate Bill 324 from State Senator Clyde Chambliss, which would increase the number of seats on the Board of Pardons and Paroles from 3 to 5 and make the chair selected by the board instead of the governor. Some see the change as needed, given some dysfunction the board has seen, while others see it as a backdoor way to increase the parole rate.
The law says that those guidelines are to be updated periodically, and the law says that they have to do that. Well, they've not done that, and a matter of fact, they only adhere to those guidelines 20% of the time. Now, that is not the parole rate. I'm not focused on the parole rate. My focus is if we as government write the rules, we as government should follow the rules. And if we as government are not going to follow the rules, we should change the rules to what we're going to do. People need to know.
We are asking you to vote against this bill. I think just offering a different perspective. When we were over here in 2010 working on the parole board reforms, a really important clause was added to their statute that said that the board's paramount duty is to promote public safety. And right now our in-custody prison population is about 85% violent. So the candidates coming up for parole don't make it easy for them to find a lot of people to parole.
But the fact that we don't have any oversight means that those folks, specifically the chair, can ignore the law and there is no recourse. So that's the point. That's why we're here. And again, we have to move those deadlines now because we were flat out ignored.
That bill was eventually advanced by the committee and will now go to the full House. In the Senate Judiciary Committee today, a vote on a measure called the Back the Blue Legal Protection Act. House Bill 202 from State Representative Rex Reynolds would grant law enforcement officers legal immunity when they use force deemed constitutional and within the scope of their duties. It would also create a process for judges to decide before trial whether an officer is immune from prosecution or civil liability. Supporters say the bill strengthens protection for officers who face dangerous, high-pressure situations and brings Alabama law in line with federal standards. But critics argue it could reduce accountability and lead to more deadly encounters, particularly for black Alabamians. In the end, the bill advanced along party lines.
Law enforcement officers who use force constitutionally while carrying out their duties are immune from prosecution. Again, law enforcement officers not immune for any unconstitutional use of force during execution of their duties. So if they operate outside the scope of their duties, they have no coverage.
It is a green light, like I said, to kill black folks. And only black folks, but it's a green light to kill them.
Mr. Chairman, I've been through that three or four times about the escalation of force.
As I said, this right here opens the green light for them to do anything in their discretion. They can walk in here now, and in their discretion, they look at me and they say, you know, hey, he looks like a threat to me, and bam, bust a cap on me.
In the Senate Education Policy Committee, lawmakers considered and advanced a controversial bill regarding gender ideology in schools. House Bill 244 from State Representative Mac Butler would prohibit public school employees from discussing gender identity with students in grades pre-K through 12. This sparked plenty of debate in committee, with supporters saying the measure protects traditional values and parental rights, and critics arguing that it's a political overreach that could further isolate gay and lesbian students. Despite clearing committee Chairman Donnie Chasteen voiced skepticism that the bill would make it to the Senate floor before the session ends.
When a student enters a school, they still carry with them their First Amendment rights. They can absolutely talk to a nurse, a teacher, a counselor, whoever they want. This is banning classroom discussions of such. It also includes prohibitions on sexual insignia like a pride flag.
This is a bill that does not accomplish anything besides further creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty in school. Kids in middle school and high school are aware that gay and transgender people exist as they have access to the internet. Additionally, some of them are gay and transgender. Attempting to stifle discussions of such topics will not change these realities.
This does align with President Trump's executive order. And just recently, we had almost 40,000 applications for the CHOOSE Act that tells you there is clearly a dissatisfaction with what we're doing in public education.
If we lean back on some of what this legislation grows out of, it grows out of those 2 commandments in Matthew. Basically where it says, love thy neighbor as thyself, and you know that piece. And so a part of this for us, I hope, is not making others feel in any way alienated and invalidated.
Not going to make any promises as to where this bill goes from here. Appreciate your work on this, but if you're going to bring something like this next year, you need to get it early so that we're not backed up with all the House bills that we currently have before we try to move forward with anything like this.
And in the House Education Policy Committee, lawmakers considered legislation that would require schools to include twice in a student's career instruction on life choices that lead to better outcomes. Senate Bill 289 is sponsored by State Senator Arthur Orr, but is being carried in the House by State Representative Danny Garrett.
We are 21% of our state at least is in poverty. We are 45th in the country in terms of family stability. 45.3% of the children born in Alabama are born to unwed mothers. And we also, that was 35% 20 years ago. So we're on a bad trend here. This bill basically takes data. It's not values that it's trying to impose on anybody, but it takes statistical data and said there's 3 things you can do in this order that will minimize the likelihood that you will live a life in poverty. Number 1 is graduate high school. The next thing is get a job. And the third thing is marry before you have children. What this bill does is require school boards to set a policy to age appropriate for any grade, any age, to teach those 3 sequences twice before they graduate high school. So you can do it in the 5th grade, in an assembly. You can have a curriculum. You want to do it more frequently, but you can do it in the 5th grade or the 10th grade. Just twice before they graduate high school, tell somebody, if you'll do these 3 things in these orders, your life just might turn out better from an economic standpoint.
That bill advanced and now goes to the full House. And finally tonight, Alabama lawmakers are moving forward with significant changes to the state's grocery tax, aiming to provide relief to residents and grant more autonomy to local governments. This morning, the Senate Finance and Taxation Education Committee approved a substitute version of House Bill 386, which not only accelerates the reduction of the state's grocery tax, but also incorporates provisions clarifying the authority of local governments regarding their own sales tax on food. House Bill 386 is sponsored by Representative Danny Garrett. It would reduce the state sales tax on groceries from 3% to 2% effective on September 1st. This move builds upon the 2023 legislation that lowered the tax from 4% to 3%.
It goes ahead and removes the second penny on the grocery tax, and then at that time it includes the contents of House Bill 387. So what the substitute does is basically combine House Bill 387, and that's the one for the locals. You know, there's been that dispute about the locals' ability to drop a penny on their groceries or whatnot. This clarifies all that and gives the local governments the authority to do that if they so choose, to do it incrementally as opposed to one fell swoop, that they can do it like we're doing here in Montgomery.
We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Jamie Kiel from Russellville. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Been a long session.
It has been.
And you've got some pretty interesting legislation moving through the process. We're getting toward the end here. You had a bill on the floor last night I wanted to ask you about. It has to do with masking, especially has to do with protests. We've seen a lot of these protests on college campuses and a lot of students masked. You've got legislation addressing this. Kind of walk me through it.
Sure. Well, the issue here is when someone's in a protest currently, if they have on a medical mask, they do not feel inclined to pull it down to identify themselves to a police officer. And so that's what this bill simply does, is if you're wearing a surgical mask or a mask that you might portray as for health care purposes, that you pull that down so an officer could ID you.
Okay. You had some opposition to it on the floor, saying it violates First Amendment or health care, rights and things like that. How do you respond to those arguments?
Well, I think it's a misunderstanding of the bill. I think that it's really a public safety bill. We have people coming onto college campuses doing the protests, and I think they're hiding behind the mask. They're not necessarily using the mask for health purposes.
I see. So it's gone to the Senate, one of many House bills that are getting ready to get in line, I guess,
Sure.
in the Senate. Another bill you have has to do with notifying parents if their children get a ticket.
Sure.
And it's known as TJ's Law. Walk me through the history of this.
Well, what I found out is that my daughter could be driving my car, my insurance, burning my gas. I'm liable for her. She could get a ticket, get pulled over for a ticket, and I would never know about it because she has a job. She could pay her own ticket, and so I would never know about it. And a friend of mine from high school, her son was killed in a car wreck, TJ Morgan. He was killed in a car wreck. He was not wearing his seatbelt. And after he had passed away, his mom, April Vafius, was cleaning out his bedroom and found 3 traffic tickets from when he was a minor, and they were all seatbelt tickets.
Wow.
And so she reached out to me, and I just never realized that a parent would not know if their child got a ticket or not. And she wanted to be able to help other children, other parents, correct their children if they had this issue. And so it's a very simple ask of law enforcement is to attempt to contact a parent or guardian if a minor's pulled over. They're not required to actually make contact, just to attempt. And so it's a very low bar, and it's a very small ask for the safety of our children.
With the thought being, had that parent known specifically on the seatbelt thing, there would have been some opportunity to intervene.
Well, April said this morning in committee that she always wears her seatbelt, always made her son wear his seatbelt, and had she known that he was not wearing his seatbelt, she could have taken his keys. The second time, she could have stopped him from driving. It's her car. And so she just wants to make that available to parents going forward, that we can correct our own children if there's an issue there.
Mm-hmm. It's a tragic way to go about that. I mean, it's a tragic circumstance, but a common sense law. What's the prospects of it passing through the Senate?
Well, it passed Senate Judiciary Committee this morning on a voice vote, and I'm very hopeful it gets on the floor. I think once senators look at what we're actually asking of law enforcement, which is only to make an attempt, a phone call, a text, a letter in the mail if it comes from the agency, whatever the attempt is fine with us, just so there's an attempt made to notify the parent.
Now, does that include college campuses? Because I'm thinking there's a lot of 17-year-olds that'll go to college and maybe they get a ticket on campus or something. Is that any consideration?
It is. I work with the college campuses. So a 17-year-old on college campus, if they get a traffic infraction, their parent would be notified. However, if it's a parking ticket, That's not what we're after here.
Okay.
We're after seat belts, speeding, reckless driving, all the things that someone who's younger, they might not see the health risk in doing, but obviously April Vafius sees the health risk now with her son who has passed away.
We'll be watching that. Somewhat related in terms of driving, but this also has to do with immigration. Your bill having to do with impounding vehicles if someone is pulled over and they don't have the proper identification.
Sure.
Walk me through what the point behind it.
Well, many cities already have this as an ordinance. Russellville, where I live, for instance, we have an ordinance now that if a police officer pulls over someone who does not have a driver's license, and not just in their possession, but they have not had and do not have a driver's license.
Because you can look up somebody,
They can look it up on the database and find out if somebody actually has a driver's license. But if they do not have one, then they have the option to impound that vehicle. I mean, you don't need to just ticket somebody and let them keep driving if they do not have a driver's license. And so that's what I'm asking for our other law enforcement officers across the state. That can happen in a city, but counties typically do not have home rule and cannot make those laws on their own or ordinances on their own. And so I want to give that enforcement power to officers, that if they run across somebody that does not have a driver's license and has not had a driver's license, they're driving illegally, that they can impound the car and not let them proceed to drive.
And is the thought partly that it could crack down on illegal immigrants who don't have driver's licenses, continuing to operate vehicles in the state?
Well, sure. I mean, anybody that does not have a driver's license, and if you're here illegally, you do not have a driver's license. And so anyone that does not have a driver's license, they don't care to abide by our laws. I have to go get a driver's license, and you have to go get one, and you're the people watching, they had to go take a test and pay a fee, and they have to renew that. They're following the law to be able to drive. And so all we're asking is for everybody to follow the law. And if you don't need to continue to drive.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, when we ask you, what are its prospects in the Senate?
Same thing. It's ready for the Senate floor. I feel very good about getting that on. It's part of our immigration package. And so I feel like that we're going to make a strong statement and pass those bills this time.
Like many bills, it's waiting. The Senate being so slow, it's really up in the air in terms of what can kind of actually get to the floor and pass with so little time.
Absolutely.
Well, we're out of time. Representative, thanks again for coming on. Look forward to having you back, maybe after session, because there's so much on the education front that you've been involved in that committee. Not enough time today, but I hope you will come back.
Be glad to. Thank you, Todd.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Alabama Public Television is your place for quality educational services. Free professional development for educators and child care providers. Access to free curriculum-aligned videos, lesson plans, and instructional resources with PBS Learning Media. And all the PBS Kids programs parents know and trust. Learn something new every day with Alabama Public Television. Visit us at aptv.org/education to learn more.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Laura Hall from Huntsville. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we've got a lot to get to, but I wanted to first ask you, it's been my observation over the years watching you in the House, you have a unique role. You kind of hold everybody accountable in terms of if a bill is coming to the floor, you're going to make sure that they get asked questions, right? You draw out the information. So can you kind of talk about that, why that's your kind of role in the House of Representatives?
Well, it really started out, I've always been one that's been interested in making sure that the information that I'm voting on, I want to make sure I have all of the information. And it was a few years after I was in the legislature, there was a bill that was introduced that the governor said that that many people didn't know what was in the bill. I think they call it Century 21, that 666 bill, but it was a large bill. I mean, it was many pages. And when the media, when he was questioned, the person was questioned, they asked him, why weren't people aware? And he said they just didn't read the bill. And that was one of those days when I had not really read the bill, had not asked any question. I had not talked to anyone because I was new in the legislature. And I decided that day I will never again be accused of not reading a bill, or at least showing effort in making sure that I raise questions about what may be present in the bill.
It's just interesting because when your light comes on and they see you coming to the mic, they know, oh, I better have my ducks in a row and know what my bill does. So.
And I enjoy it. I mean, it's not anything that is vindictive, but it is intentional, well intended to make sure that the information that we're being provided is what I've heard.
Yeah, I think that's well understood that you're not doing a performative thing, and that's why I think it's interesting. I wanted to also ask you about the issue of education. You're an educator, a lifelong educator yourself. Lots of happening on the education front right now. You've got a pretty healthy budget, another record.
Sure.
You've got the RAISE Act that has the student funding formulas in it. And yet you've got the CHOOSE Act, which I think you opposed, that's kind of being implemented. How would you comment on the state of education right now in Alabama, how we're faring?
Well, I would say right now we're 50-50. We are certainly doing a good job in terms of raising the process or changing the process by which we fund districts and making sure those districts that do not have adequate funds or funds that we think that would adequately address the education of our children, that those funds are being changed based on the poverty level, etc. The other side of that is that we could do even more, I believe, if we were not funding or providing funds for people to send their children to private schools. I think those funds could be used to provide services that many of those children need in those poverty areas that I just mentioned.
You're talking about the CHOOSE
Act.
The
CHOOSE Act, yes. So I think that we are, on that side, I think that we are certainly addressing the issue, but how much better could we address the issue if we had all of those funds going into our schools and making them the school that would meet the needs of our children?
What's been the feedback from your district? Have there been parents that are curious about utilizing the CHOOSE Act? I mean, what's the feedback you've heard?
So there are parents, parents generally are going to say if there is an opportunity and they see that their child is going to benefit from that, they're certainly going to utilize the CHOOSE Act. You can't blame them for that. But on the other side, there are parents that are saying, I want to make sure I want my child to stay in the public schools. I want my child to have a teacher that is prepared and ready to meet my child. A teacher that is going to believe that my child can learn like every other child. And so that's that to me is the most important thing. A child walks into the classroom, there should be a teacher there that's saying welcome, and we are going to provide all of the resources that you need to make sure that you're successful.
Switching gears, I wanted to ask about your legislation having to do with the Alabama coat of arms. It's no secret on our coat of arms we've got the flags of all the, I guess, nations, if you will, British, Spanish, French, but also the Confederate flag is right there, and we know what that symbol can really mean and have that connotation. So your bill, what would your bill do?
So my bill really would bring forth what we call the historical perspective in terms of the flag. And it has been because the hearing that I had, not last year but the year before, many of those comments were raised from people that was in opposition to having the change of the seal. And so the idea is to include everybody, Dr. Murray from the Department of State History and Archives, Mr. Barry Matson, who is with the Indians Commission, Speaker Pro Tem, has also been involved in the conversation. There are other individuals that have been a part of the conversation the past couple of years. That idea is hopefully that what we come and bring before the body is one that is going to be historically correct, and that's our ultimate goal.
So you think this is probably a conversation for another session?
Yes, it definitely is, because the conversation, we're at the point now where I feel that the conversation is really in a good place, but not to the point that we would have educated the legislators to that they would be clear and not be fearful about making the decision.
Well, sure, and it's been a big deal over the years.
Sure.
I mean, it was the early 90s when the flag came down off the Capitol.
Right.
It was I guess 2010s when the flags came down over here.
That's right.
And so, but every time that seal is anywhere, you know, it's small, but it's there. And is that part of it? Is just that symbol is not something we want.
Well, that is, and that really, I started this process because it was a state trooper that came to me and said, I have been a state trooper for almost ready to retire. But one of the greatest challenge I have every day when I put the suit on,
because it's right there on his arm,
is the seal, and what can we do about it? And that's when we started the process.
Well, I'll certainly want to follow that going forward.
Sure.
We're out of time, but thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Good luck the rest of this session. It's going to go fast.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at the same time with more coverage of the legislature here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.